All right, thanks, John. Thanks everyone for being here. This is Andrew Muffet. Go ahead and call this meeting to order of the Lafayette Parking Commission, Thursday, May 7th, 2020. I'm assuming everyone's had a chance to go over the minutes that John sent. So if we could get a motion to approve those. That would be
A motion to approve.
Second.
okay. And then those in favor, roll call. Cindy?
Aye.
And TJ?
Aye.
And Ken?
Aye.
And Andrew, aye. All right, so moving on.
I need to know who seconded. I couldn't tell the voice.
Ken.
Okay.
Ken seconded.
Thank you.
Thank you. So John, we have, it looks like, a petition to install one handicap parking space near 1312 Howell Street. Lawrence Barnard, resident at 1312 Howell Street. And you mentioned in our notes that this was put up, right?
Correct. Yes. So, and again, with the public format that we're doing online, then we actually discourage folks from coming unless it's absolutely critical. So obviously Mr. Barnard won't be joining us on this call.
Right.
I would represent him. Hey, Andy, if you could scroll down to the first, there's a graphic of 1312 Howell Street. Keep going. There's Mr. Barnard's request, and then here's the graphic. So this is, I think, right next door to the Linwood Saloon, or Linwood Tavern, sorry. And so I think the concern has been on weekends in particular, Thursday, Friday, and nights, he has difficulty finding a parking space, and he is disabled. So he requested this in March, in I think the early part of March, and so the meeting wasn't originally going to be until towards the end of April. So as we've done in the past, we went ahead and installed the sign since we didn't want to make someone wait that much longer for a handicap space, with the intent that then we would bring it to the next commission meeting to get final approval. So Nick Staniford did install the sign for us. Nick, I'm assuming that once the commission approves it, that you would actually go back and paint the curb also. Is that correct? Or do we not paint curbs? I don't recall.
No, we will go back and paint the curb blue.
Okay, good. So it's pretty straightforward. And I sent letters to adjacent property owners. I did get a call from the Linwood Tavern guy, but he wasn't concerned about this. He was concerned about some other issue. So I haven't gotten any negative comments from anyone about it. So I'll leave it up to you all to vote. And
as usual with this type of space, it's probably in his notes, and I apologize if I missed it. He's aware, right? That
yes.
Anyone? Okay.
Yeah. In fact, Randy, if you scroll back one page on his letter, what I've done is I've actually prepared a draft, a template letter for folks if they're submitting a handicap, and in it, it says, I understand that the parking space is my exclusive use. So when they sign it, I make them aware of that, because you'd be amazed the kind of letters I was getting from folks. They were telling me their whole medical history in the letter. And obviously, I didn't want to know that. We don't want that to be public information. So I came up with this draft letter, and now basically I take it to them and they sign it.
Okay,
so
perfect.
They are aware.
All right, looks good. Pretty straightforward, like you said. Does anyone have any questions or concerns?
I'm sorry, was someone asking a question? I thought I heard something.
Yeah, phone call maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone any commissioners have any concerns before we move forward? Okay. All right, do I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Can you identify yourself when you make a motion?
Ken McCammon, sorry.
Thank you, Ken. Do I have a second?
TJ Themes, second.
Thank you, TJ. All in favor? Cindy?
Aye.
Ken?
Aye.
TJ?
Aye.
All right, Andrew, aye. All right. Thank you. Next agenda item Thank you. For discussion only, thank you. We also had this in our packet, and I believe this is open for our guests to discuss.
Correct. Yeah. So I'll do a quick introduction, and I may turn it over to either Dennis or Margie, both of whom are on the phone, if they want to share a little bit more. But you all probably recall that the city put in a whole new water line, almost the length of 4th Street, from I think about Romig all the way to Teal Road or US 52. That was last year, and the road then was completely resurfaced. And so before the restriping occurs, we wanted to take a look and see what we could do with regard to bicycle accommodations on the street, so that we could put the appropriate markings on the road surface, rather than just going in and doing what was there before. So Margie has taken this to the Bike Ped Committee, and I believe they have supported this concept. Margie, if you want to address that, you're welcome to. And then after that, we'll turn it over to Ryan King from BF&S, which is the consulting firm that we hired to take a look at this and come up with some recommendations for us. Obviously, this is a draft plan, and so we're looking for your comments or feedback, and then we'll bring it back to the full commission in July for your final approval. And at that point is when we will send letters to all the adjacent property owners, letting them know about the project. At this point, none of the adjacent property owners have been notified because we just wanted to have this discussion with you all first. So with that, Margie or Dennis, I don't know if one of you wants to share anything more.
I can.
Okay.
So
thanks.
when the paving first took place, I just reached out to Jeremy, to the engineer's office, to ask what the striping plan was, because last year he brought the striping plan. If you remember, you looked at it for Salem Street, and Jeremy is on the Bike Ped Citizen Advisory Committee, and he brought that plan to the group, had them look at it. The group made some recommendations. The plan did actually change. And so, you know, when 4th Street was paved, I reached out to Jeremy to see if that, you know, would be an option again to bring it to the advisory committee. And he suggested reaching out then to BF&S and asking them to look at it, rather than just doing it all completely in-house like they did Salem Street. So that's how BF&S came into it. The Bike Advisory Committee has taken a look at the draft, and what you're looking at today may even be like the second draft. Well, I know it is because there were some comments and recommendations that were given, and so the plan has changed a little. So in addition to bike lanes and sharrows, because it is a bike and pedestrian advisory committee, we also looked at what kind of accommodations were being made for people walking, especially for children, because it is within the school zone, as well as the 1 mile radius of a school where children do not get school bus service. So this entire plan is within that area where kids would be walking. So we were interested in what the crosswalks looked like and where the crosswalks were located. So that's what the committee looked at and made comments on. So that's what I've got.
Thank you. And of course, I should clarify, the reason this is coming before the Parking Commission is because there is potentially an impact to the parking along the on-street parking along 4th Street. So with that, Ryan or Dennis, did you have anything you wanted to share before we let BF&S present?
No, I think Margie covered it very well. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Margie, for that. That was good. I neglected to mention all the pedestrian stuff too, so sorry about that. So with that, Ryan King from BF&S, is a landscape architect who's been working on this project. He's got others. There are several others. In fact, I'll let all the BFNS folks introduce themselves if they'd like. And I'll turn it over to Ryan to walk us through this thing. He's got it in a plan view. And if we need to enlarge a little bit, Andy, or actually, I guess you can just share it now with the presentation with Ryan and Andy so that he can control it.
Already did that. Thank you.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry, I'll shut up. Ryan, it's up. I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so I'm Ryan King, landscape architect with the BFNS, and then also on the call is Alan Hammersley. He's an engineer. He's the head of our Parks and Trails department here at BFNS, and then Colin Sullivan. I think most of you guys know him. He's our client liaison up in Lafayette. And I don't believe, oh yeah, Dave Buck's on too. Hey Dave, he's the office manager up in Lafayette. So I'll go ahead and jump in. Can everyone see the plan sheet title page that I have shared? Okay, nods all around.
Yes.
So
It's
the
probably
project
easier
starts,
to ask if they can't, just because.
okay, yeah. Yeah, if I need to slow down or re-clarify, just someone jump in and tell me to go back or stop. So the project starts here on the south end, is where the plan sheets start at Teal Road. And everything from this complex south.
Hey, Ryan, sorry, I'm going to interrupt real quickly. Is there any way you can enlarge the image? So that
enlarge?
Yeah, can you? Yeah, that helps. And then can you just kind of, if that helps a lot, thank you.
Okay, yeah. So this striping plan here at the Teal Road intersection is an ongoing NDOT project that I believe has had their design completed. So matching the 2 southbound lanes and the 1 northbound lane starts off the project. And south of Montefiore, I don't believe there is any on-street parking currently. So everything south of Montefiore is bike lanes and lane striping. But you can see here that we're matching NDOT's design for this US 52 intersection. So continuing north, bike lanes on both sides of the road continue, and you can start to see here at some of the minor cross streets, we start to implement what Margie was talking about is a little bolder pedestrian crosswalk striping, the piano key style, and that will be aligned with existing curb ramps of the sidewalk that's along 4th Street, as well as stop bars at the stop signs. So sheet number 4 is really where the impacts to the on-street parking occur. And this note here, just my understanding is that there's no on-street parking south of Montefiore to the end of the project. And then north of Montefiore is where we begin to replace the existing on-street parking with a designated bike lane on the northbound and southbound side of the street. So you can see here on these plan sheets, these highlighted areas indicate lengths of 4th Street that have on-street parallel parking removed. And then later on, you'll see some green areas that show where we are keeping some proposed on-street parking for local businesses. So moving down, the on-street parking between Murphy Street and Montefiore is removed to become bike lanes, as well as between Hickory and Murphy Streets. So these sheets are broken down with notes block by block. And then south of the Biltmore, south of Owen Street, between Hickory Street, you can see here, we've restriped with a slight jog in the road to have a designated bike lane southbound as well as northbound, while maintaining 6 on-street parking stalls for the Biltmore and Banh Mi. I believe the Biltmore has some street parking and maybe off-street parking here on Owen Street. And Bonny, I believe, has 2 to 6 parking stalls off the street here, as well as some parking opportunities on Owen Street. The bike lanes continue north of Owen Street all the way to Central near Bombarding, and all the on-street parking in this stretch has been removed for the bike lanes in this concept. The major businesses along these blocks, the Village Pantry and Ben-Hur, both have parking lot accessibility off Central Street to the south, and then as well as several parking stalls north of Central Street. And that is where on-street parking currently ends at Central Street. I don't believe there's any on-street parking in front of the elementary school. So the extra road lane widths along the school have been changed to a designated bike lane to the south, and then to the north with the additional turn lane in front of the school. The designated bike lane becomes a Sharrow lane. So in front of the elementary school, northbound bike traffic and car traffic will share the road. And those Sharrows continue to the north, all the way north past Kossuth, and then the designated bike lane traveling southbound continues in front of the school. There's no change to this little auxiliary area here in front of the school. My understanding is that that's used by crossing guards, police officers, and temporary parking for loading and unloading hours at the school. You can see here in the school zone, we've continued the piano key striping at all pedestrian crosswalks. To the north of the elementary school, at the old railroad corridor, is currently where on-street parking resumes, and that's where we have it resuming on the southbound side of 4th Street. But on the northbound side of 4th Street, we turn that Sharrow back into a designated bike lane. So the local bar is located here, and that will have the maintained on-street parking in front of it. We have 10 spots striped out currently in this plan. And then continuing north past Fountain Street at the Bauer Community Center, the final page of the on-street parking striping. The southbound lane is changed to a designated bike lane with on-street parking stalls, 5 proposed in front of Smitty Bread and Spot Tavern. So Romig Street is where the striping of the bike lanes and on-street parking ends. And north of Romig to Alabama, that entire length will be striped with Sharrows, indicating that cars and bikes share northbound and southbound traffic. Then on the last page just shows that these Sharrows end at Alabama, with no change to the center line and no change to any of the parking signage or striping. So overall, we're proposing to have 21 on-street parking stalls and having designated bike lanes for the majority of the 4th Street roadway that's been resurfaced in the last year. So that's a quick run through of the plan, just pretty general overview. If anyone has questions or concerns, feel free to ask. I can answer anything you guys want about how we got here, or if you guys need to see any changes, we can talk about that too.
Just my initial thoughts are, I mean, I like the most of the plan. I think it's been well thought out. You know, we're committed to being a bicycle friendly and pedestrian community. That's something that we, you know, made a priority for ourselves. And as you said, with Union and Salem, kind of went through this process, and it's actually worked out, you know, very well so far. And sometimes you do have to make some difficult decisions. And most of the places that you talked about, I'm very familiar with where their off-street parking is and around the corner. And I think that works pretty well. The one I'm not quite sure about was the last one down there by Smitty Bread and the Spot. I mean, I know the Spot has some parking beside it. It's off-street. I don't know if Smitty Bread, who owns what there, you know, if they get to use any of that or not. So I would want to just make sure through there that will work. And then down where you finish at Alabama, as you know, we're in the process of working with a company to look at turning 3rd and 4th Street to two-way streets. So I just want to make sure that as we go through that process and this process, that what we're doing with that lines up with what we're doing here, and we don't end up with a mess there at the Alabama intersection, or we have a bunch of sharrows or something we have to redo because of how that project ended up. So I just want to make sure there is coordination between this project and that project. So if there is overlap, and maybe there's not, maybe it'll line up easily and fine, but I want to make sure that that dialogue is taking place during both of these projects.
Mayor, this is Dennis Carson. I made both companies aware of that, so there is communication on that, and we are looking at those things that need to be coordinated. And also, I just want to comment that on Smitty Bread, that is owned. The building is owned by Paul Baldwin, who has the building next door, the Spot Tavern, and they share parking for both Smitty Bread and the Spot there. So Smitty Bread does have off-street parking as well.
Good. Well, that's good. I'm glad to know that. Thank you. And thank you for making sure that coordination was taking place. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I have a question. This is Cindy, about the local. So you're removing it on both sides of the street, or no, you're keeping some right in front of the local, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then on the, what would that be? The east side of the street there, you're removing that?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what we have indicated right now.
Do you know how many spots that you're removing on that side? Maybe that's not a fair question.
No, I have that written down. Or I estimated, since there's no real marking, I think I would estimate about 10 to 12 parking stalls on the east side of the road are being removed in this plan.
Does the local have off-street parking? I don't think so, but
It looks like they have an open lot behind them, but it does not. I don't think they have a curb cut access directly off of 4th Street for cars. So I think they have parking in the rear.
It is very limited, and this is one of those areas, Cindy, where we'll be talking to the local bar too before we finalize this piece of the plan.
okay, because I know there's that crowd sometimes it can be, you know, elderly a little bit when they have their fish fries or whatever, and I don't feel like that's very much parking for them. And I know it's just a Friday, Saturday night thing probably, but that's good. That's good. Okay.
I do know that this is one area where the parking is heavily used, so we'll be talking to them before we finalize it.
Okay.
That is next steps for BF&S is We have a list of local businesses along 4th Street that we're going to reach out to individually to discuss this plan and their parking needs and anything else that they might have concerns with. So all the local businesses will have their chance to look at this and give some input.
Okay.
Do you have any other thoughts or comments?
As we move on down towards Mary Lou, that direction, like Murphy Street and in between the Biltmore, and is that Murphy? Oh, I can look here. Now, there's some residential, I do see people parking along there, but I do see they have an alley. So they have off-street parking there?
I believe all the residences south of Hickory Street have off-street parking.
Yeah, and I drive that multiple times daily, and it's rare to see a vehicle parked there. There is maybe 1 or 2 of those houses where they do park on street,
Okay.
but they do have off-street parking available.
Okay. So do we know how much parking we're going to lose here?
I can do just on distances and estimating the amount of driveways. I can get a rough number of what I can estimate off an aerial, and I think that the total number of stalls along 4th Street right now for the entire project area is somewhere around 130 on-street parking stalls. And that's just a rough guess based on our aerials and some of the previous signage that we can see. And what we have proposed is 21. So there is a major difference in the amount of on-street parking available. But what areas we're removing the majority of the on-street parking for are along these residential blocks where everyone has additional parking options off-street or on side streets as well.
And I'll mention also that on this section of South 4th Street, there are no marked parking stalls on the street. And there, as you can see, even with this graphic here, there are blocks where you could park on the street, going further south there on that graphic where you could park. I mean, parking is allowed, but it's very rare that anyone ever parks there because like those apartments there, they have their own parking off street. The other residences have their own parking off street and such. So even though there may be the potential for that many spaces and that many cars to park, the reality is that it's much, much less than that.
Yeah. And
I can add
Google,
one more thing to that.
Mm-hmm.
This is Margie. I'm looking at the bicycle master plan that was adopted back in 2015, and they're showing on 4th Street that there would be either shared lanes or a bike lane on 4th, and they're looking at it from Harrison Bridge all the way south of Keel on Pullen Hill all the way to Veterans Memorial, and they show either a bike lane or shared lane, that whole length, and they looked at and studied extensively things like parking. So I think with the strength of that plan, which I'm sure BF&S looked at as well, it would support putting bike lanes where that parking, where there's the potential for parking, but people are not parking. So just another point.
One other point to add, this is a snow emergency route, and so during snow events, people are advised to remove the vehicles from the roadway already. There's signage up for that currently.
And I will add that our approach on these first 2 or 3 versions of this concept put a major priority on getting a designated bike lane the majority of the project length. So that was kind of our starting point, was to see how we could fit a bike lane along the most linear feet of road. And there was only one section really where we needed to go to sharrows based on the existing automobile traffic lanes. So there's plenty of flexibility in this concept to add more sharrow signage rather than a designated bike lane if that is deemed necessary to get to a certain parking count.
Where does our enforcement area stop? Is it Alabama there, or we go up to Romig? Our parking enforcement?
This
John,
is Ken. I
what-
believe we go to Romig because we set up some parking spaces for the feed store Buckles a few years ago.
Okay, I couldn't remember how far we went up with enforcement. I know John Withers is on the line.
Yeah, that's correct. Roman Street, we have 2-hour parking on both sides.
Okay.
And that's being maintained in that particular block, the parking on the street.
Yeah, the only change north of Romig is going to be the sharrows to let bikers and cars know that they need to share the travel lane.
Right.
So no, yeah.
All right, do we have any more discussions, questions? No, they're gonna put this together for us for our next meeting in July, I believe. So, yeah, before that happens, any other thoughts or comments?
Ryan, it's Nick Standiford at the City of Lafayette Traffic Department. Your proposed parking spaces, what are the dimensions of those?
They are proposed at 8 feet wide, and then I think I have them drawn in at 22 feet long. So 8 by 22 is the standard that I use for these.
And then down at the Biltmore, where we have that traffic shift, do you know how wide the traffic lanes ended up?
Right here.
Yep.
They should be at least 10 feet wide from between the center mark and the bike lane. 10 foot is the minimum. I met that everywhere for this project. Here at the beginning and end of the block, they flare out a little bit. So I think it might be just in this area. They're close to 10 feet.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan.
All right. Anything else? Okay. John, we don't have to vote on this, correct? It's just a...
Correct. Yep. Just make sure if anybody has any other questions, and if not, we'll address it in more detail at the final plan in July.
Okay.
Thank you all. And BF&S, I think that's it, unless anybody has any other questions, and you're welcome to leave if you like.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. See you later.
Bye.
Well, it sounds like, and looks like after